If you ask me what the best FPS title of the past 10 years has been, it'd take me a while because most of them suck. COD has become the same regurgitated garbage but filled with even more bugs, 343 doesn't seem to care about Halo, and Battlefield can't have a good launch to save its life.
Shit, I think we got a crash.
The most recent FPS game I've been enjoying has been Hunt Showdown, but it's far different from the arcade shooters that got me into the genre. For me to give my favorite FPS title of the past decade, we have to go a bit further back to the year 2016, where a game was released that rivals the original Modern Warfare 2 for my favorite FPS of all time, Battlefield 1.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
And yeah, I know I said Battlefield has had some pretty shit titles lately, but for me personally, this was the last good one. Why am I even bringing up BF1? Well, that's because the game has seen a resurgence. 6 years later, the game had a peak player count of over 53,000 on Steam alone, significantly more than the most recent Battlefield 2042. This is 99% because of a Steam sale that happened at the beginning of the month, but the more interesting thing is players aren't leaving. Or at least as fast as you'd think. Even a few weeks later, the player count still hits the high 30s to low 40,000s, which is still more than 2042, and that's not even including people who own the game through EA. The main reason? BF1 is just really fucking good. Of course, it's accumulated some issues over the years, but at its core, it's an amazing FPS game even today. So I thought it'd be fun to revisit this title and go over why I think it's one of, if not the best FPS games to come out over the last 10 years. Campaigns might only be a small part of FPS games, but they play an important role. Sure, you might play a campaign once and then never touch it again, but it can leave a lasting impact. 13 years later, we got Ghost back in a Call of Duty campaign, and that's because we were still talking about him from the original Modern Warfare 2.
Fucking hell.
Along with connecting to characters, campaigns are a great introduction to the game itself. You'll get to use a plethora of weapons and utilize different gameplay mechanics, while also familiarizing yourself with maps that might be featured in multiplayer. But where Battlefield 1 I think goes above and beyond for its campaign is the story. Most of the time we'll only follow a couple of characters within an otherwise concurrent story. BF1's approach was much different. Instead of having a singular campaign, we have access to 6 war stories that revolve around different people in different aspects of World War I. When DICE created this game, they wanted to stray away from that super soldier MC because the Great War was so much more than that. Tank battles, dogfights, stealth missions, trench warfare, these soldiers fought on so many different fronts, and DICE wanted to capture those individual stories. And although the characters in this game may be fictional, the situations they are put into are not. There actually was an all-black infantry regiment known as the Harlem Hellfighters. There was massive tank battles where often British tanks would be seized by the Germans. The tale of Lawrence of Arabia actually happened. Instead of dealing with corrupt politicians or fucking General Shepard, we get these wonderfully crafted mini stories about individuals and their fight. Would they live or would they die? You wouldn't know until the very end. Really satisfies the old immersion boner knowing that these were actual things that soldiers could have experienced. Obviously, DICE took some creative liberties so that the missions would have a variety and actually be fun to play, but in a war where around 20 million people died, it's nice to see a focus on the sacrifice of these soldiers rather than the glorification of war. But as great as the war stories are, they are a bit short, meaning the multiplayer would be the main thing to keep players coming back. Battlefield's been known for having, much larger scale battles involving normal infantry, but also utilizing vehicles like tanks and planes. With servers reaching up to 64 players, they'd need to have game modes that created a balance between man and vehicle combat, and it allowed success on both sides. We obviously had to bring back Conquest and Rush as they are staples in Battlefield franchise and often the most popular. TDM and Domination are there for smaller lobbies and faster paced games, and War Pigeons, I can't say I ever played that one.
Burn up!
But it was a brand new game mode introduced in BF1 that became one of my favorite in any FPS game ever. Operations. Who would have thought that making a combination of Battlefield's 2 best game modes would have created another awesome game mode? Operations is a mixture of Conquest and Rush, where a lobby of 64 is split into attacking and defense. Similarly to Rush, the attacking side will need to capture sectors to move the front lines back, and like Conquest, a ticket system is in for the attacking side. If the attackers failed, they would be resupplied with the behemoths such as a dreadnought, airship, or armored train. What made this game mode so fun though was that it wasn't just one map. If the attacking side pushed through and gained all the sectors, the map would change and they'd have to do it again. Sure, the game could end on the first map if the defense was able to hold off all the pushes, but most times you would end up on both maps. This made for some of the most intense matches I'd ever had, and sometimes would last well over an hour. It actually felt like a war, and capturing or defending these sectors felt meaningful. You're constantly fighting on new terrain and will have to adapt your playstyle to get the upper hand. I could go from being a scout on one sector to maybe medic or support on one with more close range combat. You're fully invested through the entire match, and winning was just a satisfying feeling. But if you didn't want this much of a time investment, you could just play the other modes, which, again, are also good. Having great game modes is good in theory, but if the game plays like absolute dog shit, it doesn't mean anything. Thankfully though, BF1 has some of the most fun gameplay of any FPS. Kinda would have to if I was gonna give it this much praise. First off, the maps. Each one has a vastly different landscape, but all deliver on the atmosphere. Playing and watching planes fly by or buildings get destroyed with the sound of gunfire and explosions just puts you in the right mood. Sure, you can make anything work on any map, but if I'm playing on something like Sinai Desert with a lot of open space, I'm bringing out a sniper, whereas if we're on Argonne Forest that has a lot of tight corridors and trench gameplay, I'm bringing out the fucking shotty. And speaking of weapons, there's a lot. 77 on launch, whereas a game like Battlefield 2042, yeah. Each weapon felt unique and had their strengths and weaknesses. Unless you're out here with the fucking Calibri or M1903 experimental, you can find success with each gun. And even better is you don't need a fucking master's degree to make a class. You got games now where you got 14 different stocks, 10 barrels, 12 types of ammo, 6 lasers, and then you gotta figure out the right combination, and then after that you can still tune those attachments to make basically a whole new gun. No, in Battlefield, you can change the sights of a gun, the magnification on those sights, whether you want a bayonet or not, and set the recoil direction. And then the options within these categories are small, so you can spend more time playing the game instead of hours creating a class. And once you're in, you'll notice there's a great balance between the normal gunfights and vehicle combat. Obviously, if someone is in a tank or a bomber, they're going to have the upper hand, as a singular soldier isn't surviving a blast from a landship cannon or getting bombed from the sky. The dude riding on a horse is going to get some increased health and stronger weaponry, because if they didn't, well, no one would ride on a horse. And yeah, the behemoths are going to be strong. They're brought in to try and help the losing team mount a comeback. However, these vehicles aren't so oppressive as to where someone playing boots on the ground won't have fun. Tanks are pretty slow, so you can make use of artillery guns, anti-tank grenades or mines, rockets, or even another tank to take it out. Planes are the same way. We have anti-air guns and K-bullets that you can use for damage, or just another plane can take it out in a dogfight. And while the behemoths are strong, if you get a shit driver or people inside, it's not going to do much damage, but like everything else mentioned, you can use things on the map or from your classes to help destroy it. And speaking of classes, man, my transition game is on point today. Classes actually matter in BF1. You can choose from either Assault, Medic, Support, and Scout, and each one serves an important role in game. Assault classes have access to more run and gun weapons like submachine guns and assault rifles, and make use of gadgets that can help take out enemy vehicles. Medic has more semi-auto rifles and has the important task of healing and reviving teammates. Support usually has more LMGs and can resupply your teammates with important resources like ammo and grenades. And finally, Scout has access to sniper rifles and has a much easier time at marking enemies through scopes as well as flares. Each one of these classes has a different playstyle, and you'll probably find yourself swapping between classes multiple times in a match. Team getting bodied by tanks, pull out the assault and blow that bitch up. Team starting to fall behind on tickets, pull out the medic and revive your inferior teammates. Every class plays an important role, and this is nice to see in an FPS because usually it doesn't matter what kind of class you have. Got an SMG? Run and gun. LMG? Run and gun. Shotgun? Run and gun. Sniper? Run and gun. Classes are usually built around the individual, but BF1 gives you way more tools at your disposal to help your team. And that's not even to mention the special classes you can get, like the Flame Trooper, Tank Hunter, or Sentry. But above everything I just mentioned, Battlefield 1 just feels rewarding. It's kind of hard to explain, but everything in this game feels so satisfying. The sound of a long-range sniper headshot, blowing up a tank and wiping out a squad, or pushing onto a point and taking out everyone on it. Every action feels like you earned it, and it just blasts my brain full with dopamine. Sure, the game can piss me the fuck off sometimes, like if I died from the same bomber 8 times in a row, but the highs of BF1 are very high. Obviously the game isn't perfect and has had some issues as it's gotten older. Finding a good server with good ping can sometimes be a challenge, and there's a few cheaters, but the gameplay is still fun as fuck and runs great on modern hardware. I haven't played an FPS as complete as Battlefield 1 since, well, Battlefield 1, so I highly recommend you give it a shot. Also, probably have an easier time finding a game on this than 2042. Oh hey, it's me, Tony from the future, saying, well, this really isn't that true at the moment because 2042 got put on Game Pass, so a lot of people are trying it out, or maybe people who own the game are giving it another go. The game is free if you have EA Play, but I also been seeing it go on sale more frequently on Steam. So there you have it. Do you agree with me that BF1 is the best FPS to come out of the past decade? Let me know in the comments. If not, let me know which FPS game you choose. If you enjoyed this, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support me further, the link to my Patreon is in the description. There's a bunch of cool rewards like exclusive content, Discord badges, picking stream games, early access, and shoutouts at the end of my vids, like for Killer Bunny, Leon, Little PK, Nova, Peppy Jewel, Nicholas Gutierrez, Tech Rob, Shaky Pants, and Chupa. That's all I have for you this time. Hope to see you here again.